Hello, ladies. First of all, I want to start off by saying happy Monday. And today I want to continue talking about self-awareness. We'll probably be on this topic for a good probably month is what I'm thinking, unless the Holy Spirit guides me in a different direction. But I want to talk about self-awareness and self-awareness as far as our personalities are concerned. And a lot of times when it comes to personality, we get so used to saying, well, this is just the way I am. I've been doing this I've been like this forever and I can't change. And the thing about it is, even though we all have different personalities, right? There are certain things that can be changed and improved upon as far as our personalities are concerned. Because each of the personalities, and I want to say, for instance, if you looked at the Enneagram test, like you go out to EnneagramInstitute.com and you look at their test, there are 9 different personality types that's out there, right? And the first one is the reformer / perfectionist. And then number 2, you have the helper / people pleaser. And number 3, you have the achiever, right? And so those top 3 personalities is what I call the Energizer Bunny type personalities. And that's because you exert so much energy on a daily basis, just being able to maintain those personalities unless you start doing the work, right? Partnering up and powering with the Holy Spirit and changing what it is you're doing. You're going to exert so much energy into those 3 personalities. Why? Because think about it. For a perfectionist, that list can go on and on and on to the point of consuming you. You're draining. It's a draining personality. And when you look at number 2, you've got the helper / people pleaser. That's also a draining personality, right? Because you got to keep going and going and going, like the Energizer Bunny commercial. Then you look at number 3. You look at the achiever, right? Same thing with that. You can never run out of things, right, to have achievements in. So it's like you've got to get to the point of being able to know when to stop. And what I'm saying is that none of these 9 personality types are bad, right? There's strengths and weaknesses to each type. What happens is that we're going to get to the point of reaching a fork in the road where these personality types, and all of them in general, there's with the weakness parts I'm talking about, at least the weakness part, we're going to get to the point where with these personality types that we are going to reach this fork in the road, and it's going to be the realization that they are no longer serving us. So think about it, it's like at one time for a perfectionist, it might have served them as far as, say, for instance, in your childhood, you grew up in a very impoverished neighborhood. Might have been a lot of crime, just all kind of stuff going on in the area. And the way that you coped and without like getting caught up into it was when perfectionists took over, right? Perfectionism took over and you went into performing / Energizer Bunny mode, right? In order to get approval. And although that was not good as far as a life of striving, but what happens is that even though it wasn't good, it kept you from getting caught up in the streets, right? Because the perfectionist side of you, right? That ego would not want to think of him or herself, right, out there doing what everybody else is doing. So at that time, in your childhood, in your young adulthood, in your teenagehood, mainly the childhood and teenage years, I would say, is when it served a purpose, right? It was serving you. But then as you reach young adulthood, that's when you start to see that this personality type, starting in young adulthood, that's when we really start to see changes in our system. That's when we realize this is no longer serving me. Even though at one period of time, it probably did. But by the time you reach young adulthood, this is no longer serving me. Because what happens is you don't realize like all of your energy, your mental, emotional, spiritual, right? All of that energy and physical, because whatever, the mind, body, and soul works together. So all of that energy is being taken up by you keeping the coping mechanisms / dysfunctional patterns of behavior in place with your personality. So if you, number 1, the perfectionist, like I said, everything is just your whole world you've ended up with a limited worldview. Your whole world centers around either you being perfect, right? Your environment being perfect, right? And then the people that you're hanging out with, expecting perfectionism from them. So in essence, what happens is that this is your whole world, right? And that's like what I call a spirit of tunnel vision, because that's all that you see. And even when it comes to, it gets to the point of when it comes to your stress responses, right? Those learned stress responses from what I call in my coaching methodology, freedomology. I call that the 5L cycle, right? Part of that cycle is your learned stress response. So let's just say, take number one, for example. If you're a perfectionist, if you want to fight, you can be reasonable in that fight. But 9 times out of 10, a perfectionist is going to fight by expecting perfection out of each and every person that he or she deals with. That's the fight response from trauma and overstimulated stress. That's going to be your fight response. You're going to want perfection out of each and every person. But think about, how will that work well if you are dealing with a traumatic situation like of a death? Let's say for instance, a death in a family or a death of a friend or something like that. How would that work well as far as you expecting perfectionism out of other people in a situation like that, or any traumatic situation? Could be a car accident, anything. And then the next thing you want to look at is the flight response. The flight response for perfectionists would be, and for any type of personality type, is escapism, okay? Or you just peace out every time, right? You escapism as far as finding something to do that you can just take yourself to another world. It also can be you just walking out the door peacing out, right? For a person who is a perfectionist, that flight response is going to mean you're going to escape into making sure that everything is perfect. That is the flight response. Everything and everyone, not everyone, but everything in your environment is perfect, right? And you're going to expect perfection out of yourself. That's the flight response, right? And that's the form of escapism. But how long could that go on before you are drained? Because there's a lot of energy. What nobody gave you the memo on is that there's a lot of energy in being perfect, in achieving, in people pleasing. And so your body is constantly on the go. So like, since that whole those 3 personalities take up so much energy, when it comes time for you to be able to have energy to deal with trauma, which is going to happen, we can't escape it in life, and overwhelming stress, whether it's financial or emotional or physical, illnesses or whatever, you won't have energy to deal with anything else, let alone a relationship where you're going through a narcissistic abuse cycle. There's no room for that. You see what I'm saying? Because that energizer personality has taken over. So like I said, what once was working for you, so to speak, as Dr. Phil would say, is no longer working for you when you become a younger adult and then older adult. And that's when you know it even involves you having to get rid of them when you're trying to elevate and bump up to the next level. And a lot of times God will say, no, you got to start to get this stuff purged out of you before I get to the point of elevating you to the next level with all of this stuff from that personality running at the forefront of your brain, if that makes sense. And so we went over fight, we went over flight, and we got 2 more responses. We've got the freeze response, and the freeze means your body basically does like a reptile situation where all of your bodily systems freeze up or react a certain way. Sometimes it can be your blood pressure spiking up. Sometimes it can be your body freezes and you get an upset stomach. It can be all kind of bodily things that happen, or that you just can't even move when you're in that freeze mode, right? A healthy form of freezing is to just be able to take a time out and kind of reassess a situation. A perfectionist who has not worked on powered up and partner with the Holy Spirit when it comes to their personality is going to want to, first off, boom, they're going to want to shut down, right? Instead of being able to just take time out to think, right? And then we've got the last stress response, and that's fawn. And fawn, another word for fawn is please, appease. And what that means is that you are trying to get approval from your abuser, right? So you're trying to please your abuser and get them to basically be comfortable with you. And it's at all costs. And so no matter which one of these 4 stress responses you decide to endeavor, right? No matter which one it is, they are all in essence abandoning yourself. They all involve self-abandonment. And that's what we don't want to do. You understand what I'm saying? So along with working on powering up and partner with the Holy Spirit in the weak areas of this stress response, right? Of your personalities, right? And your learned stress responses, is also understanding the amount of energy that's stored up and that's being used to keep these functioning. And you don't realize until you start working on your unresolved trauma, you don't realize just how much energy went to all of these other things that they didn't even have to go to. You see what I'm saying? But it was because of the personality, right? That personality being so in place that was reinforcing, right? Those responses, those learned stress responses, and having you in a vicious cycle of the hamster wheel. So, food for thought. And I'm hoping that you'll be able to get something out of this video, something with tweak in your mind as far as self-awareness and your personality type, and also challenging you to go to EnneagramInstitute.com to see what your personality is, the strengths and weaknesses, what worked back in the day, and what things you know that you need to work on getting rid of. God bless. Until next time.